This conference will now be recorded.
All right, we kind of covered most of it. I think I'm gonna focus on only the permission SQL Server securable and object permission level. So that's what we're gonna practice today. All right, I'm gonna create my first user. So I can actually right click on security, new login, or I can actually expand here, and on the login I can right click and say new login. So for my example, I'm gonna create my SQL authentication. So I'm gonna say user AA, and I'm gonna put a password. So since this is test, I'm gonna uncheck all these boxes. What it means is enforce password policy means it's actually going to inherit the operating system's password policy. SQL Server will inherit any policy that your Windows operating system password policy, meaning it will be like complex password and characters and more than eight characters and all stuff. And enforced password expiration is also inherits your operating system password expiration policy if you have any. And also the last one is user must change password at the next login, meaning so a DBA give them password, then when they next time when that users login, technically it will ask them to put the password again. So I'm gonna leave the password policy off for a moment. Actually, let me say because this is my laptop, it's not going to have like enforced password policy regardless, but servers have password policies set. The first step is I'm going to make them server role, server level role, and from server level role there are different roles that you can see here. So like bulk admin, DB creator, meaning if you say, for example, on specific user to be a DB creator, meaning once he logged in, that specific user should or will can create a database. So that's what DB creator role means. And process admin, disk admin is related to this. Security admin, meaning if it's security admin, that person can actually create login similar to this and all stuff. And if you give it a sysadmin, that means that the specific user has all access, like all access. So sysadmin user is very limited, and it has to be limited to only for the DBA. And sometimes, yeah, actually usually for the DBA. Unless in otherwise there is like mixed responsibility between the Windows team and the DBA team, but this has to be entirely for the DBA. So for now, I'm going to give it sysadmin role, meaning that person can actually do anything. Right. All right. So I'm going to say okay. So I'm going to log in as a user A. Right. That's the user I created. You have user A, and I'm going to put my password. This is my server. It's SQL authentication. When I try to log in, it will ask me for to put my password, my preferred password, because if you remember, we kind of set an option where next time a user login to change the password. So I'm going to change my password, then I'm able to log in. So similar to my previous access, I have all access, and I can even see all the detailed things. If I'm interested, I can even drop the database, right? I logged in as sysadmin. So like I have all the access, I can do whatever I want, right? I can do whatever I want. Right? I logged in as AA, right? Keep that in mind. All right. The second login I want to create is and this AA even can create a user as well because it's sysadmin, right? I logged in as user AA, and I'm gonna go to create new login, and that one can create a new login. So this time I'm gonna call BB, and security I'm gonna put a password, and I'm not gonna enforce password policy this time. But this time, let's make this user to be a database reader, right? A database reader. And for that specific example, I'm going to use Adila Stick database. So I have to go to user mapping, then I'm going to select Adila's tag, and I'm going to make that user to be a database reader, right? That's a database reader. So this is database level role, okay? This is database level role. So in database, this is specific to database. Like, so if we go to our PowerPoint, if you see the first access I gave, if you remember, for user AA is server level. So I gave it access server level to everything you see here. The second user BB, his access or her access is limited to database. So I'm looking into a specific database. In our example, I think I gave it to Adila Stick database. So not other databases. So these other database are prohibited, and only one database permitted. So that's what I'm trying to do. So I'm trying to. It's not just making that. So the first two things, right? Three questions we need to answer, right? The first question was who should have the permission, and we know it's BB user, and what object. Now we identified the object. It's an elastic database, and the third question is what permission. So we're answering what permission right here, and we're telling it, I'm going to make a database reader. This user shouldn't write, update, or delete any record from the database. So I'm going to make a database reader for Adila Stick, right? Okay, cool. Let's see. So let's see in the logins. So yeah, I have AA and BB. I can go in properties and see what his permissions again, user mapping. So I know it's Adila Stick, and yeah, it's database reader. So let me log in as user BB. So so this time I'm going to log in as user BB. If you see, I don't even see the SQL Server agent. The SQL Server agent. I have limited access. The default database is master database still for this user. If I take you there, so properties, default database master, that's why you see all the database listed under, even if that person doesn't have permission. So I gave access to Adila Stick, if you remember. So what if this user is so curious and try to open up different database, right? For example, B11. Ooh, that he doesn't have access. But Adila Stick, yeah. And can you see all the tables? Yeah. Also can actually query the tables. Let us, for example, B select all from B10 dot test. Yeah, it can query actually. How about I want to update, right? Update is writing, right? So what if I want to update? Have in mind I logged in as B user here. I'm not connected as A anymore, and I logged in as B, and you can see where I'm connected right here. I logged in as B, and I'm trying to update statement, right? Update. I want to update B10 dot test set age is equal to, maybe I'm gonna say 5 where age is equal to 1. So I'm trying to change age 1 to 6, right? So I'm trying to run a statement. Oh, it's telling me something is not right, and it's actually telling me like the update permission was denied on object test database this schema. For what? For this user. Why? Because this user user BB is just a data reader in database level. Right? So that's why this user is just a reader. All right, so let's play around a little bit. How about we give it access for yeah, let's change this database user to be read and write, right? Read and write. So let's give it access. So security, login, BB. I'm gonna go to properties. So giving a little bit more permission, and this time for Adila stack, instead of just data reader, I'm gonna make it data writer as well, meaning that person can update or something. So sometimes I need to reconnect, but sometimes refresh my work as well. Let me try. So now I give it more permission, and the permission is just to update as well or to write. And you see, now I'm able to update because I got the permission on. So these are this is one of scenarios. So what if let's go back to the PowerPoint and let's be a little bit more aggressive and reserved, right? So far we kind of create user giving server role, like we make it SCA, right? Or DB creator or security admin, whatever. So that's server role, right? We gave server role. We have seen that. And also we gave database role, right? So from database role, what we give is data reader, and we did data writer for user BB. But we have another user called CC. And for this user, let's be more stingy and reserved. And let's give it access only to a specific schema, not all objects in the database, right? Let's be a little bit more aggressive, right? So for that reason, we might need to have different schemas. So the default schema we have seen is DBO, right? The default schema we have seen is DBO, but you can create your custom schema as well. So let's see what we have, right? Let's see what we can do. So let me browse first the databases. So I have an Adila stack, and in looking at security. So in looking at, I have a schema called B10. Okay, let me create another schema, and I'll create a table to different schema, right? So I have to connect. Keep in mind, I connect as B. If I try to create schema, actually, I should be able to because I'm a writer, but might not be able to table. But anyways, let me connect as my sysadmin in new query, and I'm gonna do I'm gonna create schema. So you guys, if you don't have any new schema, probably you don't have if you didn't create so far. But let me create my schema first. Then you guys can create the schema as well, so that like you can have practice the same way I'm doing. So I'm gonna create schema. First, I need to use Adila stack database and create schema called I want to call B11. How about that? And go. All right. This will create my schema on Adila stack. And if I come and look at schema, and if I have to refresh, I have B11 schema. That's my schema. So now whenever I create a table, I can create against B11 schema, right? So for example, I'm going to create one table and drop for example, let's say two. All right. How about I create table name J, okay? Or I create table called Adidas, okay? I'm going to create table. table called Adilas. So what up? So when I create a table called Adilas, so I didn't specify the schema name, so it will take the default and well, sorry, good job. Name and in var car let's do 50. Object atlas. Okay, atlas, I'm gonna go underscore B11. Okay, so yep, I created a table. So yet if we look at the tables actually, so you see Adilas underscore B11, and it's going to schema called DBO. So that's the default scheme. So, but I'm going to create under my scheme, right? I'm going to drop table first. So this time I'm going to specify my schema, and that's going to be B11. B11 dot my schema. So you could tell if I refresh the table now, then the Adilas underscore B11 is under different scheme. So what we're trying to simulate in our security exercise is, or SQL Server security exercise is, we want to simulate, as I explained, I want to give access for a user only for a specific schema, so that that user does not have to see different other schemas. So we do that for different reasons. For example, let's say a good example is HR and marketing team, right? So you may have different schemas. One schema is set for specific HR related table, human resource related table, and the other schema, it could be sales related table schema. So HR is very limited, right? I mean, it should be very protected. You have employees' personal information and everything, and the sales department shouldn't be able to see HR table. And let's say all HR table is under HR dot whatever the name of the table, like under HR schema. So if someone is hired in HR as a HR, then we give it HR schema. And if someone is hired as a salesperson, then we create a login for that specific user as a salesperson, right? So that's how the schema come into play and will be powerful actually to manage such tasks as well. So in our example, we're gonna create user CC, right? New login and user CC, and I'm gonna make it SQL authentication. And I'm not gonna force password policy. Caps locks on. This time I'm just gonna I'm gonna say okay. So we just created a login. We didn't attack that user or associate that user to any object, or we didn't give any permission. So this is just a public, meaning a user is logging into the server, is able to view things, but cannot touch anything, cannot open anything. It's kind of restricted. So like maybe if someone's coming to the apartment and we gave it access to get into the lobby, and he can sit in the lobby and wait, but he doesn't have any key to log into any of the apartments, any of the floors. Maybe you can consider the floors as a database. Once you get the floor, maybe you can consider as the tables or the schemas as different house, but that person is can't able to log in or get into the apartment. He's gonna sit in the lobby and enjoy in the lobby, but he doesn't have a key, to log into any of the objects. User C is like that at this time. So we just he just has, or he or she, whatever, has a login, just a login, so they can connect. So they cannot open anything. They cannot open any of the user, but they kind of have general overview. But let's do this. Let's give user C access, right? User C. So I'm gonna go on database, and I'm gonna go to Adila step. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to security right here. So in the users, I can actually create a user. So you can see that when I make user BB, database reader and writer, then it creates a user right here. That's how it maps. So I'm gonna create a new user, and I'm gonna call the username is going to be CC, and login name is CC, default schema, doesn't matter, but I'm gonna give it DBO. So I'm gonna go to securable here, securable, and I'm gonna search permissions, and it will ask me, are you looking for specific objects, all objects, or all objects belong to schema? And you can specify a specific schema here. You could do right here, and you can select your schema. Yeah, I want this person to be able to log into this table, B11 schema. Right, we could do that. Right, then once you have it, you remember about these options right here. Grant, with grant, and deny. So grant is like you given a control access. With grant is with ability to grant another user. Deny is this user shouldn't have this access. So you can specify from this schema, you can specify whatever the access you want. For now, let's just give it all access. I know it's empty table. Okay, so now you see user CC is added. So when I log in, what should I expect? This user should be able to see only one specific scheme. All right, I'm gonna log in, and this time as CC. So if you remember earlier, user CC was not able to open Adila stack. Now it can, and when it comes to table, it can see only one table. Technically, only one schema, right? So only B11 schema. But we have, in our database, we know we have more than one table. So we give that specific user only to this schema, or to this, technically at this time, one schema. But we can add B12 table there. So we can add 2, 3 table there, right? Just we adding, right? So the table is here, and do we expect users to see all these tables? Yeah, obviously, because that user have access to schema level. So if I refresh, probably may require me to log back in as that user to refresh it. But if I go to database table B11 schema, it should actually it should have brought all the other schemas as well. B11. Okay, let me refresh the user again. Let me go see again database at the last tick, and I'm concerned on security, login, and user CC properties. So user CC, yeah, specific Adila's table is specified here as well. So that's why. Well, actually, let me go to specific object, then that, and I'm gonna go to objects, and this time I'm going to select schema here. I'm going to select schema, and it will have me query the schemas, and that's my schema B11, and this is what I'm supposed to give. So earlier, actually, I gave it for a specific table. So if I give permission to the schema, then that user should be able to, if as user C right here, if I see the tables, I should be able to see all tables. Okay. So earlier, actually, I gave it just for a specific table. So the schema. So this time, someone decided to drop this table. B11, I'm sorry. So I'm going to drop B11 table. Right. I just deleted one table. Then when I delete it, and that table has to go out of the list. And I can add that table back if I want. And that actually, if I refresh it, that user has it. So the access is what label? Schema label. So if a person has access to one specific schema label, then that person actually can have all objects under that schema. All right, I think let's go a little bit stingy now, right? We kind of did server level, database level, and we did schema level, right? So let's get stingy a little bit, and let's give access to specific table, just one table, and other table shouldn't be accessed, kind of thing. Right? All right, like for that, we're gonna create user DD, and let's see what we can do. All right, so I'm gonna go in. I always just make sure that you always come back to. Sometimes what my students keep doing is for testing purpose, they get connected to using whatever the access they got, and they try to log in and try to create another user like DD, for example, not realizing they don't have access to do those things, right? It will give them this error message because CC is actually his access is limited to a specific table schema, which is B11 schema. So it cannot do this management related access unless they have server level role. So just make sure that which connection you're in. This will tell you which connection you're here, right here. Are you logged in as user CC or you logged in as Windows Authentication, which has SC access, right? So that's critical. So make sure that you remember those things when you actually practice. So I always have to go to a user which has authority to create a new login. So I'm going to create a new login again. And this time I'm going to create a login called DD. And this time my user is I'm going to set the password as well, and I'm just going to create a new user, and I'm going to go to the database, and again I'm going to go to Adila and security. I'm going to add a new user, and this time I'm working on user DD for login DD, and I'm going to go with schema and securable. So I'm going to search for specific object. Let's say we want to give these users from DBO schema specific table, right? So let's look for a table. So this is my table, and I'm going to browse from all tables. It's going to give me the list, and I'm interested on DBO players. Okay. So what access do we want to give this user? Do we want to give alter statement, control statement, delete, insert, or maybe we want to do it read only? Just select, and if you need it, reference. So if I don't want one user to do update statement, I can do deny, right? So that person shouldn't have update statement. Or no, if I don't care about the update statement, as long as that person has only user. So the reason why we need to deny is if this user by any chance can actually do what? Can actually inherit some additional access from database role, for example, or schema role. So that's why we need to specifically deny sometimes. Okay, so user DD, I want him to log in as user DD, and he's trying to, I'm giving access only specific table, and which is called players, right? So let's log in as user DD and see if that person can actually access different database and tables, right? So this time I'm going to log in as user DD. In database, of course, if I try to open different database, it doesn't work. He has access to Adila stack, and from Adila stack, it should be only one specific table this time, only one specific table. Right. All right. Having said that, if you notice, like, let's say we want more than one user to have this specific access, right? Like, let's say we have always users coming in. Oh, we need only one table access only to this table only, and there are a bunch of users. Isn't it tiresome to go all the way through like users, add, create, whatever? So for those kind of situations, we can actually create a database role, right? We can actually create a database role. So instead of like going through all this process, so you just can create a new database role, and now, and then you can set that database role to have it. And whenever we create a new user, we will set the user to have a database role. All right, so let me go ahead and create a new database role, custom database role. So I can actually go to databases, and I can go in Adila stack, and actually in security. So I have an option to role. I have an option to role. So right here, I can say new database role. So you can name it whatever you want. For example, you can name it as let's call read and write, read write. I mean, you can name it whatever you want, and the owner, you can give it the owner to specific schema. So so let's see the role. Database role. So I have read and write, and I need to go to properties, and we can actually give access to the specific table. So this specific object. So we want this person to have the same access as the previous one. Let's say we want this role to have access to only database called, table called DBA players. Right, and yeah, we want select statement, and maybe reference if they need to, and that's the database role we want. So next time when we have a new user, let's say user EE, all right? So I'm gonna call user E, and it's SQL authentication, and we can actually go to user mapping, and this time for Adila stack, then we can actually come in, we could give our custom database role. So we know this custom database role has it's on read actually. So then we can just attach it, and that will be it. So if a user E logs in, the password. Maybe do I have caps lock on? All right, I don't remember the password, so let me see the password if I can reset it. I don't remember what the password is. Okay, so I'm trying to log in as user E right here. So I was able to connect, and if you remember, I gave access to user EE using database role. If I can log in, I obviously cannot open another database, but if I go to Adila tables, oh, I have the same access. So it's creating a database role is very important, but if you create a lot of database roles, it's very difficult to manage which database role has which access. And actually not rename it the same way I renamed it as DW. I'm just trying to show you, but just name it correctly, like reader, data reader, table reader, or specific, so that whenever you attach a database role, you know what you're attaching with. So in this example, you will be able to see, for example, DD and EE have the same role, but if you remember, I have to go to users and security and everything to give user DD. But for user EE, I just have to point database role because I created the database role. So if I go to tables at Elastic and tables, and you see they have the same access. All right, I think this will be it about security. If you want to create Windows authentication, one example could be, let's say, let me see. Okay, so I'm gonna drop this user and create this Windows authentication for this user ID test. So for Windows authentication, what we need to do, you need to have a user first, and you have to select Windows authentication, and you can actually search. You can actually search for a specific user from whatever the location is. By the way, this is the location. At this time, I'm looking for ITTS Lab, which is my computer. But if you have different location, you have to search here, especially domains, active directories. This is where you can actually find it. So I'm going to go to advanced and find, and I'm looking for a specific user. And in our example, I'm interested in IT test, right? So I'm going to select that, and yep. So I can give it. I know that's my user, so I can give it like sysadmin role. Then yep, you got it. So IT test is right here. It's create Windows authentication in with server role. All right, I think that will conclude a little exercise of security. Definitely, there are a lot of advanced stuff need to be done. For the basic exercise, this will be it. Thank you.